My boss fired me for stealing clients. So I took his business, his clients, and his reputation. Let me preface this by saying that I never planned revenge. I'm not the type to go scorched earth. But when you're falsely accused, humiliated, and thrown under the bus by someone you trusted, you either sit quietly, or you fight back. I chose the second. I, 29M, used to work as a sales manager at a mid-sized digital marketing agency in Texas. Let's call the place BrightSpark Digital. I was good at my job, really good. In fact, I was the top-performing employee for 3 years straight. I managed over 25 clients, many of whom I brought in personally, and I helped scale their digital presence and ROI beyond expectations. My boss, Gary, 45M, was the CEO and founder. Gary had this larger-than-life persona and loved the sound of his own voice. At first, I respected him. He gave me my shot. But over time, I started noticing cracks in the foundation. He was egotistical, didn't care about his employees, and regularly took credit for our work in client meetings. Still, I kept my head down, hit my targets, and even trained junior staff without extra pay. Until one day, everything changed. About 7 months ago, I started noticing that Gary was acting weird around me, short, irritable, passive-aggressive comments in meetings. I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was stressed. Then a few of my clients started getting odd emails asking if they were happy with my services or if they'd prefer to be reassigned to someone more experienced. One of my clients, let's call her Dana, forwarded the email to me and asked if I was leaving. I had no idea what she was talking about. I confronted Gary, and he played dumb, acting like he just wanted to test client loyalty. 3 weeks later, on a random Tuesday, HR called me into the office. Gary was already seated with 2 HR reps. They slid a folder across the table and told me I was being terminated for soliciting clients to leave BrightSpark and join a competitor. My heart stopped. Not only was this false, it was absurd. I had no side hustle, no competitor, and no reason to sabotage my own career. I asked for evidence. They said they had email records. I asked to see them. Denied. I asked to speak to legal counsel. Denied again. I was told I could resign quietly or be fired with cause. I walked out without signing a thing. Word spread quickly. Gary told the team I had been caught trying to steal clients and that he had no choice but to let me go. Some of my junior colleagues distanced themselves. Others texted privately, saying they didn't believe the story but were scared to get involved. The worst part? I got blacklisted. I applied to multiple agencies, no bites. A recruiter I trusted told me off the record that my name came up in negative reference checks. I was done being nice. At this point, I had nothing to lose. So I started my revenge in the most professional, surgical way possible. I lawyered up. I hired an employment attorney who specialized in wrongful termination and defamation. We drafted a cease and desist letter demanding BrightSpark stop spreading false claims, along with a request to see the so-called evidence they had. We never received a reply. I also launched my own agency. I took my savings and created a small boutique digital marketing firm. Let's call it NovaForge. I didn't poach any clients. I didn't even reach out. I simply posted on LinkedIn saying I was starting a new chapter and accepting new business. That was it. My ex-clients came to me. Apparently, word about my firing didn't sit well with several clients, especially Dana. She reached out, asking if I was available. I explained my new business. She signed on immediately. Then came 2 more. And then 5. All of them were clients I had personally managed, but none of them were under any exclusivity clauses. I then hired BrightSpark's best employees. The junior staff I had trained began reaching out. Many were miserable under Gary's leadership. I offered competitive pay, remote flexibility, and, get this, a profit-sharing model. Within 4 months, I had poached 6 of his best employees, including his top developer and account strategist. Here's where things got fun. Gary, in a fit of desperation, sent me a cease and desist claiming I was violating a non-compete. My attorney responded with a 10-page letter dismantling every point, backed by Texas law, which, by the way, rarely enforces non-competes in our field unless there's trade secret theft. There wasn't. But I wasn't done. I created a campaign titled Ethical Marketing Starts with Ethical Leadership and started a YouTube series breaking down marketing case studies, some of which were anonymous retellings of shady practices I'd seen at BrightSpark. I never named the company, but anyone in the know could figure it out. The videos gained traction. Then came the exposé. One of my former colleagues, who had left even before I did, had access to internal documentation proving that Gary had inflated client KPIs in reports to retain business. We anonymously leaked the data to a well-known marketing ethics blog. They published a feature story. 2 of BrightSpark's biggest clients dropped them within a week. It's been just over 7 months since this all started. BrightSpark has lost nearly 40% of its client base. Gary is being investigated for fraudulent reporting by a business oversight board. My new agency, NovaForge, just hit its $1 million revenue mark. I now employ 14 people, 8 of whom used to work under Gary. Dana is now my head of client relations. And I recently got a LinkedIn message from Gary, asking if I'd consider a merger. I didn't reply. 2 weeks after ignoring Gary's pathetic LinkedIn message, I got an email from one of my remaining friends still stuck at BrightSpark. He had never spoken against Gary publicly, but had always had my back quietly. His email was short. Thought you should see this. He's trying to rebuild off your name. Attached was a screenshot of Gary's latest sales pitch deck to potential investors and clients. One of the slides literally showed a photo of me from when I worked at BrightSpark, and listed, former strategic director. I was never given that title officially, mind you, as an example of the top-tier talent that built BrightSpark's award-winning campaigns. He was using me in his pitch to rebuild his company after smearing me and kicking me to the curb. That was the last straw. I had already moved on. My company, NovaForge, was thriving. But I couldn't let this go. Not just because of the blatant nerve, but because this was straight-up fraud. Using my image and fabricated job title to attract clients and investors? Nah. Not happening. So I took 3 simple but lethal steps. Firstly, I forwarded the presentation to my lawyer. Within 24 hours, a cease and desist was issued demanding BrightSpark remove all mentions, images, and insinuations connected to me or NovaForge. We also made it crystal clear that any further misrepresentation would trigger a lawsuit for unauthorized use of likeness and defamation by implication. This wasn't a bluff. Secondly, I had one of my ex-colleagues, now on my payroll, pose as a potential investor and set up a meeting with Gary, just to see what he was saying behind closed doors. Gary, desperate to impress, bragged about how he trained the guy who runs NovaForge and that they might merge soon. We recorded the meeting, legal in our state with one-party consent, and sent it to the blog that had exposed his KPI manipulation last time. They published a follow-up exposé titled Lies, Lawsuits, and LinkedIn, the fall of a CEO who just doesn't learn. Within 72 hours, Gary's new investor backed out, citing integrity concerns. Oops. Lastly, here's the petty part. I hired a skilled SEO specialist to make sure that anyone Googling BrightSpark Digital would see these stories first. We created blog articles, Medium posts, Quora replies, and even a Reddit thread compiling all of Gary's dirty moves, complete with screenshots, links, and citations. Totally factual. Totally searchable. Gary's name was digital poison now. Here's where karma hit even harder than I expected. One of BrightSpark's former clients, a huge real estate tech company, was fed up with Gary's incompetence and shady history. They sued him for breach of contract and false reporting of ad results. Apparently, had been charging them for impressions that never happened using a fake dashboard made by a former intern. Turns out, Gary had quietly sold his house to cover mounting business debts, without telling his wife. When the lawsuit hit, she found out. She divorced him and took their 2 kids. That's when Gary moved into a 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, running what was left of Brightspark from a dining table in his kitchen. How do I know all this? Simple. His ex-wife messaged me. Yes. She reached out. It was short. Polite. No drama. Hi. I know this is random. I just wanted to thank you for standing up to Gary. He ruined lives while pretending to be someone he wasn't. People like you made sure the truth came out. I'm rebuilding now too. Wishing you the best. I didn't reply. But I read that message probably 10 times. Brightspark Digital is down to 2 clients, one of which is suing. Gary lives alone, broke, and radioactive to investors, clients, and even his family. A couple of months after Gary's fall from grace, after the lawsuits, the exposé, the investor dropouts, I was settling into my office at NovaForge. We had just signed a major deal with a health tech startup, and our Q2 was shaping up to be record-breaking. That's when I got an email with the subject line. Application for junior strategist role, Gary M. I thought it was a joke. I clicked it. It wasn't. It was him. Gary. The man who tried to destroy me. Now applying for a junior position at my company. At first, I laughed. Then I got this cold, uneasy feeling in my chest. Why would he do this? What was the game? Turns out, there was no game. He was genuinely desperate. He used a generic Gmail address. He didn't mention Brightspark. Instead, he framed his experience like he was a former consultant with 15 years of strategic leadership experience and recently exploring entry-level roles to get re-immersed in hands-on work. It was the most humble, self-deprecating thing I'd ever read from him. He even attached a basic Canva-designed resume. The man who once sneered at my team for looking too startup-y was now using a template resume with fake buzzwords. But the kicker? He didn't know I saw it. The application went through a hiring funnel run by one of my department leads, Alex, my former intern at Brightspark, now head of strategy at NovaForge. Alex sent me a Slack message saying, "Bro, this is your Gary, right? He's applying through our regular hiring link like nobody would notice." We had a decision to make. At first, I wanted to ignore him. But then I had an idea. Not revenge for revenge's sake. More like a masterclass in humiliation wrapped in kindness. I told Alex to schedule an interview, but not with me. With one of our junior employees, someone who Gary would never recognize. A young woman named Naomi, who had once been a Brightspark intern that Gary treated like garbage. I briefed Naomi on everything. The interview was recorded, with consent, as part of our internal policy. Gary was docile. Overly nice. Almost groveling. He kept repeating how he was eager to learn again and respected innovative environments. Naomi asked him questions like, "Have you ever worked under someone much younger than you? Would you be okay doing admin tasks, building reports, or taking notes?" Gary said, "Absolutely. Titles don't matter to me anymore." That was rich. A few days later, I personally emailed Gary under my name. "Hey, race, what I said. Hi Gary. We've reviewed your application for the junior strategist role. While your experience is unique, we don't feel this is the right fit for you at this time. That said, we wish you the best in your job search and hope you find an organization where your values align with the mission. Regards to CEO, NovaForge." No insults. No mocking. Just a gentle reminder that the bridge he burned now belonged to someone else. Fast forward to last week. One of our partner firms, another agency we regularly collaborate with, announced a new hire on LinkedIn. Guess who? Gary. He got hired as a contract consultant for basic keyword research and entry-level content planning. Nothing senior. No authority. Just a cog in someone else's wheel. The agency's head of content is someone I mentored. She used to sit in the back of Brightspark's weekly meetings and listen to Gary talk over her for 2 years. She now manages him. I couldn't make this up if I tried. 4 years later. NovaForge is no longer just a boutique agency. We're an industry leader. We've won 4 innovation awards, were recently featured in Fast Company, and we're on track for a multi-million-dollar partnership with a global SaaS firm. I don't even handle client work directly anymore. I lead strategy, product development, and expansion. That's why it was so strange when I saw his name on the client inquiry list. Gary M. At first, I assumed it was a coincidence. Maybe someone else with the same name. But when I clicked into the submission form, the message read: I've burned a lot of bridges, and I know I don't deserve your time, but am reaching out in the hope that there's still room for redemption. I need help. That was new. I showed it to my team. Most of them laughed. One of them said, "Tell him your consulting rate is $10,000 per hour, and you only accept payment in humiliation." But I was curious. I needed to know where he was, mentally and emotionally. So I replied. We agreed to a Zoom call. No cameras. Just voices. When he logged in, I barely recognized him. Not just physically, his voice. He sounded hollow. Defeated. The charisma was gone. Gary's latest startup had failed. Twice. He tried launching a branding platform in 2023 that flopped. Investors pulled out after a bad campaign and accused him of mismanaging funds. He wasn't sued, but he burned his last safety net. His LinkedIn had been quiet ever since. Now, he was trying to launch a third idea, an AI-driven marketing automation platform. Ironically, it was something we at NovaForge were already developing and testing in beta. He said, "I've been following NovaForge for the last year. Watching everything. I'm not proud of what I did. But I need help." I asked him directly, "Why me?" His response? "Because you built the kind of company I always pretended I was building." And in that moment, I realized, this wasn't a power play anymore. This was a man asking for a lifeline. He proposed a consulting deal. He wanted NovaForge to help develop and launch his product under a white-label partnership. He was willing to give us co-ownership, credit, even back-end revenue. To be clear, I didn't need the deal. We were already ahead of the curve. But something in me, call it curiosity, or maybe ego, wanted to see what would happen if I became the one writing his performance reviews. So I agreed. But under 3 conditions. 1. Full transparency, all back-end code, financials, documents, and development history. 2. No leadership roles, he would be listed only as founder, not CEO. All decisions would be made by a joint leadership council, all from NovaForge. 3. Public acknowledgement, he would sign a statement admitting that I had nothing to do with the false claims made during my time at Brightspark. He paused at the 3rd condition. But eventually, he agreed. We launched the platform together, co-branded under NovaForge's innovation wing. It did well. Surprisingly well. Not because of him, but because of the infrastructure and credibility we provided. As part of the launch campaign, we released a Lessons Learned feature on LinkedIn. In it, Gary shared his journey from failure to reflection. He admitted his past, including a carefully worded but unmistakable line. "I once mistreated a rising talent because I saw his potential as a threat. That man now leads the company that gave me a second chance. That's what real leadership looks like. The post got 70,000 views. Comments were mostly supportive. A few called him out. But I stayed quiet. He had paid his dues. Quietly, painfully, and thoroughly. Gary now works as a product advisor, part-time, for the very platform he once tried to build alone. He answers to a project manager that I trained last year. NovaForge is preparing